My name is Grace Myers. I'm 36 years old, and for most of my life, I learned how to exist without taking up space. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a house that looked perfect from the outside. White siding, trimmed hedges, a front porch that always had fresh flowers. My mother insisted on replacing every Saturday morning. If you drove by, you'd think it was the kind of place where everything worked exactly the way it should. Inside, it was different. My father, Richard Myers, ran a real estate law firm downtown. He built it from scratch, and he liked to remind people of that whenever he had the chance. He wore tailored suits even on weekends, like he was always one step away from closing a deal. My mother, Diane Myers, it didn't work a traditional job, but she managed everything else. Social calendars, church events, school boards. If something involved reputation, she was already 10 steps ahead. We went to Grace Fellowship Church every Sunday. Samapif. Same time, same routine. My mother picked out our outfits the night before, so we would present as a unit. That was her phrase. Not as a family. As a unit, there's a difference. I had an older brother, Nathan, and an older sister, Carolyn. Nathan was the one my father talked about the most. He was in dental school by the time I was in high school, and every conversation somehow circled back to him. His grades, his clinical work, his future practice. People at church would ask how he was doing, and my father would answer like he was giving a presentation. Carolyn was easier. She did what was expected. Good grades. Polite. Never caused problems. My mother liked that about her. Said she had a calm presence, which I eventually realized meant she didn't challenge anything. And then there was me. I wasn't a problem. I just wasn't necessary. I was born later than they planned, 6 years after Carolyn. My mother once told a friend at a dinner party that I was a surprise that came at an inconvenient time. She laughed when she said it, like it was harmless. Everyone else laughed too. I was in the room when she said it. Little things made it clear where I stood. Family photos lined the living room walls, but my school pictures rarely made it up there. When they did, they were smaller, tucked between bigger frames. At dinner, conversations moved around me like I wasn't sitting there. I could say something, and it would just disappear. I got good grades. Not perfect, but good. Honor roll more than once. When I brought it up, my father would nod without looking up from his plate and say, "That's good, Grace." Like he was checking something off a list. Then he'd ask Nathan about his latest exam. You learn quickly in a house like that. You learn when to speak and when not to. You learn that attention isn't something you get by existing, it's something you earn. And even then, it's not guaranteed. So I adjusted. I kept things to myself. I didn't ask for rides if I could walk. I didn't remind my parents about school events if I knew they'd be busy. I figured out how to handle things on my own, because it felt easier than being overlooked in real time. My father had a line he used all the time, especially when we had guests over. Reputation takes 20 years to build and 5 minutes to destroy. He'd say it like it was a rule, not an opinion, like it applied to everything. At the time, I thought he meant business. Later, I realized he meant people. He meant us. Everything in our house revolved around that idea. What people thought, what people saw, what people assumed. It mattered more than how anyone actually felt. If something didn't fit the image, it didn't get discussed. It got managed. That's the word my parents liked. Managed. I remember one Sunday after church, standing in the parking lot while my parents talked to another couple. They were laughing about something, and the other woman asked my mother how she kept everything so put together. My mother smiled, that same practiced smile she used in every photo, and said, "You just have to be intentional about what you allow into your life." She said it while her hand rested lightly on my shoulder, like I was part of the display. I don't think she realized how that sounded. Or maybe she did. By the time I was 16, I understood the rules without anyone having to say them out loud. Don't embarrass the family. Don't create problems. Don't bring anything into the house that can't be explained away cleanly. And most important, don't expect anyone to choose you over the image. I didn't resent it at first. Not in a loud way. It was quieter than that. More like a slow realization that settled in over time. You start noticing patterns. Like how my mother never forgot Nathan's schedule but somehow missed mine more than once. How Carolyn's achievements were announced at dinner, while mine were acknowledged in passing. If at all. How my father could talk for 10 minutes straight about a client, but couldn't remember the name of my English teacher. It wasn't one big moment. It was 100 small ones. And eventually, they added up to something you couldn't ignore. Still, I stayed. I did what I was supposed to do. Went to school. Came home. Kept my head down. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. If anything, we looked better than most families. That was the point. Looking back now, I realized something I didn't understand then. I wasn't just overlooked, I was being conditioned, taught, in a quiet and consistent way, that my value depended on how well I fit into a story that wasn't mine. That love, in our house, came with terms. And if you stepped outside those terms, even a little, you risked losing your place entirely. At 16, I didn't have the words for that yet, but I could feel it. Every time I hesitated before speaking, every time I decided something wasn't worth mentioning, every time I chose silence because it felt safer than being dismissed. I didn't know it then, but everything I had learned in that house, every rule, every unspoken expectation was about to be tested. And the part no one in my family ever planned for? I wasn't going to choose the image. I was going to choose myself. I remember the first time I noticed him because I wasn't trying to. The library was the only place I went where I didn't feel like I had to be anything for anyone. No expectations. No comparaison. No one watching how I spoke or what I wore. Just rows of books. Quiet air. And people who minded their own business. I went there 3 afternoons a week after school. I told my parents it was for studying. That part was technically true. It just wasn't the whole reason. That afternoon, I was sitting in the biography section, pretending to read while trying not to cry. My mother had forgotten to pick me up again. 3rd time that month, I'd walked halfway there before I gave up and turned into the library just to sit somewhere that didn't feel like waiting. I thought I had it under control until I didn't. "Hey," a voice said from across the table. "You okay?" I looked up, a little annoyed at first. Not because he said anything wrong, but because no one ever asked me that. It felt unfamiliar. He was holding a book in one hand, backpack slung over one shoulder, like he hadn't decided yet if he was staying or leaving. Brown eyes. Steady. Not curious in a nosy way. Just present. "I'm fine," I said automatically. He didn't move. "Right," he said. "You just look like someone who's having a great day." There was a pause. Not awkward. Just quiet. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. More irritated with myself than anything else. "My ride forgot me," I said. "It's not a big deal." He nodded like that made sense. Like it actually mattered. "That happens?" he asked. "More than it should." He slid into the seat across from me without asking. Not in a rude way. More like he assumed I wouldn't mind. "I'm Marcus," he said. "Grace." He repeated my name like he was making sure he got it right. Most people didn't bother. He went to Jefferson High. I knew that before he even said it. Different schedule. Different backpack. Different kind of energy. The kind my parents would have dismissed in 5 seconds flat. "I come here after my shift sometimes," he said. "Quieter than my place?" "What do you do?" "Work at my uncle's auto shop. Nothing fancy. Mostly oil changes and whatever breaks." He said it like it was normal. Like it didn't need to be dressed up or explained. I nodded. "Sounds useful." He smiled a little. "Yeah. Cars don't care what people think of them. They just need to run." That line stuck with me longer than it should have. We didn't talk about anything important that day. Not really. School. Mostly. He asked what classes I was taking. I asked how late he worked. Simple stuff. But the whole time, there was something different about the way he listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look past me like he was waiting for someone more important. He didn't turn the conversation into something about himself. He just stayed. When I checked the time, I realized almost an hour had passed. I should go, I said, standing up. Same, he said, grabbing his bag. We walked out together, even though we were heading in different directions. See you around. Grace, he said. It wasn't a question, and for some reason, I believed him. I started going to the library a little more often after that. Not because I was looking for him. At least that's what I told myself. It just felt easier to be there. The next time I saw him, he waved like we'd known each other for years. Forgotten again? He asked. I shrugged. Today I walked on purpose. Upgrade, he said. Nice. We fell into a routine without really planning it. Same table most days. Same quiet conversations. Sometimes we studied. Sometimes we just sat there, talking about nothing and everything at the same time. He told me about his uncle, how he took him in after his mom moved out of state, how he'd been working since he was 15, how he liked fixing things because at least there was a clear problem and a clear solution. I told him less at first, not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't used to being asked questions that didn't come with expectations attached. It took time to realize he wasn't trying to measure me. He just wanted to know me. You're really careful with what you say, he told me once. What do you mean? Like you're editing yourself in real time. I looked down at the table. Habit. I guess. He didn't push. That must get exhausting, he said. It was the first time anyone had ever said that out loud. We started meeting outside the library after a couple of weeks. Nothing complicated. Just walking. Sometimes grabbing something cheap to eat. Sitting on a bench and talking until it got dark. I didn't tell my parents about him. Not because I thought they'd be angry right away, but because I already knew how that conversation would go. Questions about where he went to school, what his family did, whether he fit into anything they understood. Marcus didn't fit into their world. That was exactly why I felt like I could breathe around him. With him, I didn't have to shrink. I didn't have to time my sentences or filter what I said. I could laugh without checking if it was appropriate. I could admit when something bothered me without worrying about how it reflected on anyone else. You know you don't have to prove anything here, right? He said one afternoon when I caught myself apologizing for something small. I blinked at him. I'm not trying to prove anything. He raised an eyebrow. You just apologize for taking up space on a bench that fits 3 people. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Yeah, he said softly. That's what I thought. I laughed. A little embarrassed. But he wasn't making fun of me. Not really. Give it time, he added. You'll get used to not doing that. I wasn't sure I believed him, but I wanted to. What started as casual turned into something more without either of us making a big deal out of it. One day he reached for my hand, and I didn't pull away. Another day, I leaned into him without thinking. And he didn't make it weird. It just worked. 2 months went by like that. 2 months of feeling like I existed in a way I hadn't before. Not as an extra piece in someone else's picture, but as a person, someone actually chose to be around. Looking back, I can see how important that time was. Because when everything fell apart, later when the choices I made collided with the rules I'd grown up under, that feeling became the thing I held on to. The idea that I wasn't invisible, that I wasn't too much or not enough, that I didn't have to earn the right to be cared about. Marcus didn't fix my life. He didn't need to. He just showed me what it felt like to be seen. And once you know what that feels like, you can't go back to pretending you don't notice when it's missing. I stared at the test longer than I needed to. Like the lines might change if I gave them time. They didn't. 2 pink lines. Clear. No confusion. No room to reinterpret it into something easier. I was standing in the bathroom of a gas station 3 miles from school. The kind with flickering lights and a lock that didn't fully catch unless you pushed it twice. My hands wouldn't stay steady. I checked the box again, just to be sure I wasn't reading it wrong. Then I checked it one more time. Like repetition could fix the outcome. It didn't. I took a breath. But it didn't do much. The air felt thin. Like my body hadn't caught up to what was happening yet. 16 years old, pregnant, I leaned back against the wall and closed my eyes for a second. Then opened them right away, because that somehow felt worse. Like if I let myself sit in it too long, I wouldn't be able to move at all. I shoved the test back into the box, folded it, and dropped it into my bag. No one was waiting outside. No one was checking on me. The world kept moving, like nothing had changed. For me, everything had. I found Marcus behind the auto shop, sitting on the edge of a truck bed, wiping his hands with a rag. He looked up when he saw me, and the second his expression shifted, I knew he could tell something was off. "Hey," he said, standing up. "What happened?" I didn't ease into it. There wasn't a version of this conversation that felt easier if I stretched it out. "I took a test," I said. He went still, and I swallowed once. "It's positive." For a second, he didn't say anything. Not because he didn't care, but because he was processing. I could see it happening in real time, his brain catching up, running through what that meant. I braced myself for the worst version of his reaction. Panique, anger, distance. Instead, he stepped closer. "Okay," he said quietly. "Just that." "Okay," I repeated. "Yeah." He nodded. Slower this time. "Okay. We'll figure it out." I searched his face, waiting for the part where he backed away. It didn't come. "You're not mad?" I asked. "Mad at what?" he said. "This isn't just you. Grace." I let out a breath. I didn't realize I'd been holding. He reached for my hands. Still a little cold. Still shaking. "You're not alone in this," he said. I wanted to believe that. Part of me did. The part that had gotten used to him showing up the way he said he would. But there was another part of me. The one shaped by my house, by my parents, by years of knowing exactly what mattered to them. That part wasn't thinking about us. It was thinking about them. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I don't know yet." I said. That was the truth. I didn't have a plan. I had a reality that didn't fit anywhere I'd been told I belonged. "You don't have to decide everything right now," he said. "I do," I said, a little sharper than I meant to. "At least, part of it." He didn't argue. "Your parents?" he asked carefully. There it was. I nodded. The silence stretched for a second. "They're not going to take this well," I said. "That's not the same as them not supporting you," he replied. I almost laughed. "You don't know them," I said. "Then tell me." So I did. Not everything. Not in detail. But enough. The expectations, the focus on reputation, the way problems weren't solved. They were hidden. He listened the same way he always did, steady, not interrupting, not trying to fix it before I finished. When I stopped, he exhaled slowly. "Okay," he said again. "Then we deal with that when it comes." "You say that like it's simple." "It's not simple," he said. "It's just the next step." I nodded, even though my mind was already 10 steps ahead, running through every possible outcome. None of them ended well. The next few days moved fast, but everything felt slower at the same time. Like I was watching my own life from a distance, checking off normal things: school, homework, dinner, while something underneath all of it kept getting louder. I didn't tell anyone else. Not at school, not at home, not even friends I barely talked to. This wasn't something I could test out on smaller conversations. There was only one version of telling it that mattered: Sunday dinner. That was the only time everyone was in the same place, at the same time, without distractions. No rushing. No leaving early. No excuse. It was also the worst possible setting, which meant it was the only one that would work. I picked at my food more than I ate that week. I avoided mirrors more than usual. Even though nothing had changed yet. Not physically, but I felt different. Like there was something obvious about me that everyone else could suddenly see. They couldn't. Not yet. My mother was planning the church Christmas event, talking about guest lists and seating arrangements, like it was a military operation. My father was on a call half the time, stepping out to handle something urgent that somehow always came before everything else. No one noticed anything different. Of course they didn't. That almost made it harder. Friday night. I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand, staring at Marcus's name. I'd already told him I was going to talk to them. He hadn't tried to stop me. "You sure about Sunday?" he had asked. "It's the only time that makes sense." I said, "Okay," he replied. "Then I'll be here if you need me after." After. Like that part was guaranteed. Saturday felt like waiting in a line you couldn't step out of. Every hour that passed got me closer to something I couldn't rewind. By Sunday afternoon, I had already decided I wasn't going to overthink how I said it. No speech. No build-up. No trying to make it easier for them to hear. There wasn't a version of this that fit their expectations. Dinner started the way it always did. Same table. Same seats. Same routine. My father talking about work. My mother bringing up church. Carolyn visiting for the weekend. Nathan home as well, which made the timing worse and better at the same time. More witnesses. More pressure. I stared at my plate, not really seeing it, just using it as something to focus on, while my heartbeat stayed louder than anything else in the room. If I didn't say it soon, I wouldn't say it at all. I set my fork down. "I need to tell you something." 4 sets of eyes turned toward me at once. The room went quiet in a way it never did unless my father wanted it to. "What is it?" he asked. Direct. No softness. I didn't ease into it. "I'm pregnant." The words landed hard. No delay. No confusion. My mother's fork hit her plate with a sharp sound. My father didn't move. "Who is the father?" he asked. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "What do you need?" That told me everything I needed to know. "His name is Marcus." I said. "He goes to Jefferson. He works at an auto shop." I watched their reactions shift in real time. Shock turned into something else. Something colder. And right there, before anyone said the next word, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a line. And once I crossed it, there was no coming back. My father didn't raise his voice. That was the first thing I noticed after I said it. He just looked at me like I had interrupted something important. "How far along?" he asked. 8 weeks. I said. My mother still hadn't touched her food. Her hand was resting on the table, fingers tight, like she was holding herself in place. "Is this a joke?" she said finally. "No." "Then fix it," my father said, just like that. I blinked. "What?" "You heard me," he said. "You're not keeping it." There was no hesitation in his voice. No space for discussion. It wasn't a reaction. It was a decision. "I'm not getting rid of it," I said. My mother turned toward me. Sharp. Controlled. "Grace, you don't understand what you're doing." "I understand exactly what I'm doing." "You're 16. She snapped. "You don't get to make a decision like this on your own." I already did. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything that had been said. Nathan shifted in his seat. Carolyn looked down at her plate, like she was trying not to be part of it. My father stood up slowly. "You will not bring this into my house," he said. "It's not something I'm bringing into your house." I said. "It's already happening." "Then it needs to stop." "It's not going to." He stepped around the table, stopping a few feet away from me, close enough that I could see the exact moment his patience ran out. "Let me make this very clear," he said. "If you keep that baby, you are no longer part of this family." There it was. Not emotional, not loud, just final. My mother stood up too. But she didn't come closer. She stayed where she was, like she didn't want to get too close to the decision. "Grace, she said, softer now, like she was offering me a way out. You can still fix this. We can take care of it quietly. No one has to know. I shook my head. I'm not fixing it. I said, there's nothing to fix. Her expression changed. Not shock anymore. Something harder. Then you're choosing this over your family? She said, I'm choosing my life. My father didn't wait for anything else. Go pack a bag. For a second, I thought I misheard him. What? You heard me, he said again. You're leaving tonight. Richard, my mother said, but there was no real push behind it. This is not up for discussion, he said. I will not have this under my roof. I looked at her. She didn't meet my eyes. That told me everything I needed to know. I pushed my chair back and stood up. My legs felt steady. Even though everything else didn't. Okay, I said. The word surprised all of us. My father frowned slightly. Like he expected more resistance. I didn't give it to him. If this was the line, then this was the line. I went upstairs without saying anything else. My room looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Sama bed. Sama desk. Same photos that barely included me. It didn't feel like mine anymore. Not really. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and opened it on the bed. For a second, I just stood there, trying to decide what mattered enough to take. Clothes. A few things from school. A jacket. I moved quickly. Not because I was in a rush, but because stopping felt worse. From the window, I could see the streetlights flickering on. The sky had already turned dark. Clouds heavy enough that I knew what was coming before I heard it. Rain started hitting the glass. Soft at first, then steady. Of course it did. I zipped the suitcase and took one last look around the room. Nothing in it felt like something I couldn't replace. I picked up my bag and walked downstairs. My father was standing near the door. My mother was in the kitchen, wiping the same spot on the counter over and over again like it needed fixing. Nathan and Carolyn were on the stairs, watching. No one said anything. I stopped a few feet from the door. Is this really happening? I asked. My father opened the door. Rain hit the porch hard. Louder now, filling the silence. You made your choice? He said. My mother stepped forward. Just enough to be part of it. You can come back when you're ready to do the right thing, she said. I looked at her. The right thing for who? I asked. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. I stepped outside. The rain soaked through my sweater almost immediately. Cold and heavy. But I didn't move. Not yet. I turned back once. Nathan and Carolyn were still there, halfway down the stairs. Neither of them moved. My father was already closing the door. It shut with a clean, final sound. No hesitation. No second thought. Just done. I stood there for a few seconds, letting it sink in. Not crying. Not yet. Just standing in it. Then I picked up my suitcase and walked down the steps. I didn't look back again. The street was empty. No cars passing. No neighbors outside. Just the sound of rain and my footsteps on the pavement. I made it halfway down the block before I stopped under a streetlight, setting the suitcase down for a second. That's when it hit. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet realization settling in. I didn't have anywhere to go. I reached into my bag, pulled out a few coins, and kept walking until I saw the gas station at the corner. The same one I'd been in days earlier. The lights were too bright. The air inside smelled like coffee and something fried. I found the payphone outside, dropped in the coins, and dialed the only number that made sense. He picked up on the second ring. Grace? They kicked me out. I said. No explanation. No build-up. Just the truth. Where are you? He asked. Mulberry Street. The gas station. I'm coming, he said. No questions. No pause. I hung up and sat on the curb, pulling my jacket tighter around me, even though it didn't do much. The rain didn't slow down. 20 minutes felt longer than it should have. But when headlights finally turned into the lot, I knew it was him before the truck even stopped. Marcus jumped out, barely closing the door behind him. He crossed the distance in a few steps, and pulled me into his jacket without saying anything. I didn't hold it together that time. "I've got you," he said quietly. I nodded against his shoulder, not trusting myself to speak. Behind him, an older man leaned out of the driver's seat. "That your girl?" he asked. "Yeah," Marcus said. The man nodded once. "Then let's get her somewhere dry." I picked up my suitcase again and climbed into the truck. As we pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of the street behind us. Not the house, just the direction it was in. That was the last time I saw it as my home. 3 days later, a certified letter showed up, my name on the front, typed clean and precise. Inside was a document, 3 pages long, stamped and signed, legal language. No emotion. Grace Elizabeth Myers forfeits all rights to the Myers family estate. The family bears no legal or moral obligation to her or any dependents thereof. Dependents thereof. That was how they described the life I had chosen. I folded the paper carefully and put it away, not because I agreed with it, but because I knew one day I'd need to remember exactly what they did, and exactly how easy it had been for them to do it. I woke up the next morning on a couch that wasn't mine, in a house that didn't belong to me, with a future I hadn't planned. Mrs. Torres made coffee like it was part of a routine. "Not a favor. You'll need something warm," she said, sliding a mug toward me. "You don't make good decisions on an empty stomach." I nodded and took a sip, even though my stomach wasn't ready for anything. Marcus sat at the table, quiet, watching me like he was making sure I didn't disappear overnight. "We'll figure it out," he said again. This time, it sounded less like reassurance and more like a plan we had to build. We stayed in Mrs. Torres's guest room for 2 weeks. It wasn't big, just a bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out onto a backyard that needed work, but it was safe. That mattered more than anything. I found a notebook in my bag and started writing things down. Money we had, places we could call, what we needed next, $300 between us. No car that could be trusted long distance. No parents to fall back on. No safety net. Marcus picked up extra shifts at the shop. I started asking around for anything I could do: cleaning, organizing, babysitting, whatever paid cash. Pride didn't factor into it. It couldn't. By the end of the second week, Marcus found us a studio in Seattle, $425 a month, above a laundromat that ran from early morning until late at night. The air always smelled like detergent and heat. But it was ours. We moved in with 2 duffel bags, 1 suitcase, and a borrowed set of dishes Mrs. Bika Torres insisted we take. "Return them when you can," she said. I nodded, even though I had no idea when that would be. The first night, we sat on the floor because we didn't have anything else. "This is temporary," Marcus said, leaning back against the wall. "Yeah," I said. We both knew temporary didn't come with a timeline. I signed up for my GED classes within a week. Not because I felt ready, but because I didn't have time to wait until I was. Classes were twice a week. Mornings. Marcus worked late shifts, so we passed each other like a schedule instead of a routine. We made it work. I found a job at a small coffee shop 2 blocks away. Early mornings. Long hours. Cash tips. The owner didn't ask too many questions, as long as I showed up on time and didn't call out. I didn't. The pregnancy didn't slow things down. If anything, it made everything feel more urgent. I kept a mental list running at all times. Rent due, groceries, doctor visits, bus fare. There wasn't room for anything extra. We ate cheap. Ramen, canned soup, bread from the discount rack. Sometimes Marcus brought home leftovers from a diner near the shop when they were about to throw things out. "You want this?" he'd ask, holding up a container. Always. I'd say. We laughed about it when we could. It helped. By the time I started showing, we had figured out a rhythm. Wake up early. Work. Classes. Come home. Figure out what needed to be paid next. No one handed us anything. No one stepped in to make it easier. That part stopped surprising me. What did surprise me was how quickly I stopped expecting help. Lily was born in July. 7 pounds. 4 ounces. Loud enough to fill the entire room the second she got there. I remember holding her for the first time, looking down at her tiny hands, her eyes barely open, and thinking one clear thing: she's not going to feel like I did. Not in my house. Not ever. Marcus stood next to me, exhausted and smiling in a way I hadn't seen before. "She's perfect," he said. "She's loud," I replied. He laughed. "Good. That means she knows how to get attention." I looked at her again. "Yeah," I said. "She does." We brought her home to that same studio apartment, now smaller than it had felt before. A crib took up most of the space near the window. We moved things around until everything fit. Even if it didn't make sense, sleep became something we took in pieces. Marcus worked nights. I worked mornings. Lily didn't care about either schedule. We learned fast how to function on 4 hours of sleep, how to heat a bottle with one hand, how to keep going when everything felt like too much. There were days I thought about calling my parents, not because I believed they'd help, but because some part of me still wanted to see if they would. I never did. Instead, I sent a birth announcement. Simple. Just the facts. Her name, her birth date, a photo. No message, no response came. A year later, I sent another photo. Still nothing. By her second birthday, I stopped trying. That chapter was closed. Whether I liked it or not, Marcus and I talked about getting married sometimes. Not seriously, just in passing. When things settle down, he'd say. When we have money? I'd add, real wedding. He'd joke. Real chairs. I'd say. Looking around at our mismatched furniture, we kept pushing it forward, like it was something waiting for the right moment. The truth was, we were already living like a family. We just didn't have the paperwork. By the time Lily turned 3, things had shifted slightly. Not easier, just more stable. I picked up small interior projects on the side, rearranging spaces for people who couldn't afford a professional, helping a real estate agent stage a unit once. Then again. Then a few more times. You've got an eye for this. One client told me. I didn't argue. If something worked, I leaned into it. Money was still tight, but it stretched a little further. Enough to breathe. Sometimes, we made it through days by focusing on the next one. No long-term plans, no big expectations, just progress. Looking back, that time was messy and exhausting, and nothing like the life I had grown up in. But it was honest. No pretending. No managing appearances. No pretending something was fine when it wasn't. Just work. Responsibility. And the kind of quiet determination that comes from knowing there's no backup plan. It wasn't the life my parents would have chosen for me. That didn't matter anymore. Because for the first time, everything I had, even the struggle, was something I built myself. And I wasn't going to let anyone take that away. I was rinsing out a coffee pot at the shop when my phone started vibrating across the counter. I almost let it go to voicemail. Unknown number. Middle of a shift. It could wait. It didn't. I wiped my hands on a towel and picked up. "Grace Myers?" a man asked. "Yeah. This is Officer Daniels with Seattle Police. I need you to come down to Harborview Medical Center." Everything in my body went still. "Why?" I asked. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. "Your partner, Marcus Webb, was involved in a collision this morning." My grip tightened on the phone. "Is he okay?" Another pause. "I'm sorry," he said. "You need to come down as soon as you can." He didn't answer the question. That was the answer? I don't remember telling my manager I had to leave. I don't remember grabbing my bag. I just remember running outside and realizing I didn't have a car. So I ran to the bus stop instead. The ride felt longer than it should have. Every red light felt personal. Every stop felt like a delay I didn't have time for. I kept checking my phone like it might change something. It didn't. By the time I got to the hospital, my hands were shaking so badly, I had to press them against my sides just to keep moving forward. A nurse met me near the entrance. "Grace?" she asked. I nodded. "Come with me." She didn't say anything else. No small talk. No attempt to soften it. We walked down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and something colder than that. She stopped outside a room and turned to me. "I'm very sorry," she said. That was it. No build-up. No explanation. Just confirmation. I pushed the door open. Marcus was lying there. Still, in a way I had never seen before. No movement. No shift in his chest. No sign that he was about to sit up and tell me everything was fine. It didn't look real. It looked like a pause. Like something that would fix itself if I waited long enough. I didn't cry right away. I just stood there, staring at him, waiting for something to change. It didn't. A doctor came in after a minute, or maybe longer. I don't know. He was brought in after a truck ran a red light. He said, "The impact was severe." I nodded, even though I wasn't really hearing him. "We did everything we could." That line. The one people use when there's nothing else to say. I nodded again. Time of death was 9:32 this morning. 9:32. I checked my phone. 10:17. That meant the world had kept moving for 45 minutes, without me knowing. I stepped closer to the bed. His hands were still warm. That made it worse. I sat down next to him and finally felt something break. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a quiet collapse that started somewhere deep and didn't stop. "I'm here," I said. Even though he couldn't hear me, I stayed like that for a while. I don't know how long. Long enough that the nurse came back in once. Then again, eventually, I stood up. Because I had to. Because there was something waiting at home that needed me. Lily was 4 years old. She was at daycare when I left that morning. I had dropped her off like any other day. Kissed her on the head. Told her I'd see her later. Nothing about that morning felt like it was about to end everything. I took the bus back. Same route. Same stops. Different person. When I walked into the daycare, Lily ran up to me with a drawing in her hand. "Mom, look," she said. "I made this." I forced a smile. "That's really good," I said. "Where's Dad?" she asked. The question landed harder than anything else had. I crouched down in front of her. "He's not coming home tonight," I said. "Why?" I paused. Because there wasn't a version of this conversation that made sense to a 4-year-old. "There was an accident," I said. "And he got really hurt." She frowned. "Is he at the hospital?" I nodded once. "Can we go see him?" I shook my head. Not because I didn't want her to. Because I knew what she'd see. And I couldn't let that be her last memory of him. "We'll talk about it at home," I said. She accepted that answer. The way kids do when they trust you to fill in the rest later. I picked her up and carried her out. The apartment felt smaller than it ever had. His jacket was still on the chair. His boots by the door. A half-finished cup of coffee on the counter. Everything exactly where he left it. Like he was about to walk back in and finish the day. I sat Lily down on the couch and took a breath. "Sweetheart," I said, "Dad isn't coming back." She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" I swallowed. "It means his body stopped working, and he can't fix it." She was quiet for a second. "Like when the car broke and he couldn't fix it right away?" she asked. "Something like that," I said. "But he always fixes things." She said, "Not this time." I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I pulled her into my arms and held her while she tried to understand something that didn't make sense. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat at the table and looked at the numbers. $12,000. That's what his life insurance paid out. 12,000. I wrote it down, then started listing everything it needed to cover. Rent, food, childcare, bills. It wasn't enough. Not even close. There was no one to call. No parents to step in. No savings to fall back on. No second income. Just me, 22 years old, a 4-year-old sleeping in the next room, and a life that had just been cut in half. I sat there for a long time, staring at the paper, waiting for something to make sense. It didn't, so I did the only thing I could. I made a decision. Not a big one. Not a dramatic one. Just the next step. I wasn't going to fall apart. Not because I didn't want to. Because I didn't have the option. I folded the paper, set it aside, and stood up. There was work to do. The next morning, I got up at the same time, made breakfast, got Lily ready, took her to daycare, then I went to work. Nothing about it felt normal, but everything about it was necessary. Grief didn't stop the rent from being due. It didn't make groceries cheaper. It didn't give me more time, so I carried it with me. Quiet, heavy, constant, and underneath it, something else started to build. Not anger, not even strength yet, just a clear understanding of one thing. No one was coming to save me, and if I wanted a different life for my daughter than the one I had grown up in, I was going to have to build it myself. I started saying yes to small jobs before I felt ready. Because waiting until I felt ready wasn't paying the bills. It began with one apartment. A friend of a friend needed help making a studio look less empty before a showing. No budget, just a chance. I moved a couch 6 inches, swapped out harsh bulbs for warmer ones, added a thrift store rug, and used 2 plants from my own place to break up the corners. Feels different, the agent said when she walked in. Good different? I asked. She nodded. Like someone could actually live here. That was enough. She called me again the next week. Then again, I didn't have a website. I didn't have a business name. I had a notebook, a measuring tape, and a way of seeing space that made people feel something. I took photos of everything I did, before and after. I printed a few and put them in a cheap folder. That was my portfolio. At night, after Lily fell asleep, I'd sit at the table and sketch layouts for rooms I hadn't even been asked to design yet. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to get faster, cleaner, more confident. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was trying to get better. The coffee shop paid the rent. But these small projects started covering the gaps. Tips turned into checks. Checks turned into referrals. Can you come look at my place? My sister needs help with her condo. I have a listing that's been sitting too long. Each one was a step, not a leap, just forward. I kept everything simple. Show up on time. Listen more than I talk. Make the space feel like it belongs to someone. People noticed, you don't push. One client told me, you just get it. I nodded. That's the goal. I didn't oversell. I didn't promise results I couldn't control. I focused on what I could deliver and let that speak for itself. It worked. By the time Lily started kindergarten, I had a steady stream of small jobs. Not enough to quit the coffee shop yet, but enough to see a path. Then I met Eleanor Vance. It was a weekend workshop at Seattle Central. I almost didn't go. The fee was more than I wanted to spend, and I had a list of reasons why it wasn't the right time. I went anyway. Eleanor didn't introduce herself like she needed to prove anything. Mid-50s. Sharp eyes. Simple black outfit. The kind of presence that made people pay attention without asking for it. She walked past my table, stopped, and picked up my portfolio. Who taught you to do this? She asked. No one, I said. I just do it. She flipped through the photos. Slow. Like she was looking for something specific. You see balance? She said. Not just style. That's rare. I didn't respond right away. I've done some staging, I said. Mostly small spaces. She closed the folder and handed it back. You're underpricing yourself, she said. I almost laughed. I'm trying to get work. You're getting work, she said. Now you need to get paid. She gave me her card. Call me if you're serious about this. I looked at it longer than I needed to. I called her the next day. We met once a week after that. Sometimes at a cafe, sometimes at her office, sometimes walking through spaces she wanted me to study. She didn't waste time. Stop apologizing for your rates. Don't take projects that don't respect your time. Document everything. She had me rewrite my pricing structure twice. You're not charging for hours, she said. You're charging for outcomes? That shifted everything. I raised my rates. I lost a few clients. I gained better ones. With Eleanor's help, I applied for a small business loan. It took 3 tries. Each time, I fixed something: my plan, my numbers, my presentation. On the 3rd attempt, It went through. $50,000. It felt like more responsibility than money. I used it carefully. Basic furniture inventory for staging. A better camera. A simple website. A shared workspace desk. No big risks. Just tools that made the work easier to scale. I registered the business. Hearth Home Interiors. Simple. Clear. Easy to remember. The first year, it was just me. I handled everything. Client meetings. Design plans. Deliveries. Invoices. I worked early mornings. Late nights. Weekends. Not because I wanted to, because that's what it took. Lily got used to it. Homework at the same table I used for layouts. Snacks between client calls. She'd sit nearby while I reviewed samples. Asking questions. I didn't always have time to answer. "What do you like about this one?" she'd ask. Holding up a fabric swatch. "It feels calm." I'd say. She'd nod, like that made sense. By the second year, I hired help, part-time at first. Someone to handle scheduling and basic admin. It freed up time I didn't realize I was losing. More projects came in, bigger ones. A small house renovation. A full condo staging package. A referral from a real estate firm that turned into steady work. Revenue crossed 1 million. I didn't celebrate. I updated the spreadsheet and kept going. Year 3. I hired a second designer. Year 4. We moved into a small office. Not fancy, just functional. Desks. Samples. A place to meet clients that didn't involve my kitchen table. By the time the magazine reached out, I almost said no. I'm not interested in being a story. I told the reporter, "You already are one." She said, "You just haven't told it yourself." I agreed to a short interview. It turned into 3 days. She asked about everything, how I started. What I lost. What I built. I answered. But I kept certain details out, not to protect my past, to protect my daughter. The article ran in Seattle Met. From teen mom to design CEO. I didn't read it right away. When I finally did, it felt strange seeing my life written out like something complete. It wasn't. It was still moving, but it changed how people saw me. More inquiries came in. Bigger clients, better budgets. By 2024, we had 22 employees, a full team, designers, coordinators, admin, an office that overlooked Capitol Hill, not because I needed the view, because it meant we had made it far enough to choose it. Revenue crossed 4 million. Again. I didn't celebrate. I checked payroll, reviewed contracts, made sure everything held. Growth wasn't something I chased. It was something I managed. Looking back, there wasn't a single moment where everything changed. It was a series of decisions. Say yes when it made sense. Say no when it didn't. Keep moving forward, even when it felt slow. No shortcuts. No overnight success. Just consistent work. Stacked over time. And the most important part? I built it without them. No money from my parents. No connections from their world. No safety net. Everything that stood in front of me was something I earned. Not because I wanted to prove them wrong, because I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own. And once that foundation was there, nothing they said, or didn't say, I could take it away. I sat in my car for a full minute before getting out, watching them stand on my front porch like they belonged there. A black Mercedes. Oregon plates. Clean. Polished. The kind of car my father would have chosen without thinking twice. It looked out of place on my street. Which was exactly the point. They hadn't seen me yet. My father stood with his hands behind his back, scanning the house like he was assessing its value. My mother stood a little closer to the door. Posture straight. Hair set. Like she had somewhere more important to be right after this. 20 years. And this was how they showed up. I considered driving away. Just backing out. Leaving them there. Letting them knock on a door that wouldn't open. Instead, I turned off the engine. Running wasn't something I did anymore. I stepped out and walked toward them. My father spoke first. "Grace," he said. Like he had said my name last week instead of 2 decades ago. "You look, well." He paused, taking in my coat. My bag. The house behind me. You've done all right for yourself. Not, how have you been? Not, I'm sorry. Just an evaluation. What are you doing here? I asked. My mother stepped forward. We know about your son, she said. I blinked once. My what? Your son. My father repeated. Like I was the one, misunderstanding. We read the article. You have a child. A child? I said. Not a son. They exchanged a quick look. The kind people share when something doesn't match the version they already decided on. We'd like to meet him, my mother said, smoothing it over. We'd like to reconnect. The word hung there, reconnect, like something had been interrupted instead of cut off. I unlocked the door and stepped inside without inviting them. They followed anyway. Of course they did. My father walked into the living room like it was a property showing. His eyes moved across the hardwood floors, the built-in shelves, the art on the walls. Nice, he said. Original pieces? Yes, he nodded. Like that confirmed something. My mother sat on the edge of the sofa, hands folded. Posture perfect. You've done better than we expected, she said. There it was again. Measured. Ranked. As opposed to what? I asked. She didn't answer that. We're hosting an event, my father said. Getting to the point. Our 50th anniversary. November 15th. The Heathman Hotel. 200 guests. That sounds like your kind of event? I said. It is, he replied. And there have been questions. About what? About you. My mother said. People remember we had a third child. They've been asking where you are. And what have you been telling them? That you moved abroad? She said. That you built a life elsewhere. I let that sit for a second. So now you need me to show up and prove that story still works. My father didn't flinch. We need you to attend? He said. With your son. I leaned back against the counter. You want me to bring a child you've never met to a room full of people you've been lying to for 20 years? We haven't been lying, my mother said quickly. We've been protecting the family. From me? From unnecessary complications. I almost laughed. You mean from the truth? My father reached into his briefcase and pulled out a checkbook. That was fast. He wrote something down, tore it out, and placed it on the coffee table between us. $250,000. He slid it a little closer to me. Compensation, he said. For what? I asked. For your time, he replied. Your cooperation. You attend the event. You bring your son. You stay for 3 hours. We take photos. We present a united front. Then you return to your life. Like I was being rented. I looked at the check, then back at him. That's what 20 years costs? I asked. It's not about the past, my mother said. It's about moving forward. With a lie, with a narrative, she corrected. I nodded slowly. Same thing. I said, we're also prepared to reinstate you in the family trust, she added, leaning forward like she was offering something real. The estate is valued at $3.8 million. You would have an equal share. Equal. Now, after everything. And if I say no? I asked. My father's expression tightened just enough to notice. We would prefer to handle this privately, he said. But if necessary, we can reach out to your son directly. There it was. Not loud, not aggressive, just clear. A threat dressed up as concern. You want to contact my child? I said, keeping my voice even. And tell them your version of what happened. We want to be a family again. My mother said, Isn't that what you've always wanted? I looked at her. Really looked this time. Same posture, same tone. Same ability to say something that sounded reasonable, while meaning something else entirely. No, I said, that's what you've always needed me to want. The room went quiet. My father picked up the check and tapped it once against the table. This is a generous offer, he said. More than generous, considering the circumstances. What circumstances? I asked. He paused. Your situation, he said. I smiled. Just a little. My situation? I repeated. You mean the life I built without you? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. My mother stood up, smoothing her jacket, like she was resetting the conversation. This doesn't have to be difficult. Grace, it already is. I said, we're giving you an opportunity. She continued, to restore what was lost. You didn't lose anything. I said, you threw it away. That landed. For a second, neither of them had a response ready. Then my father straightened his shoulders. The event is in 10 days. He said, we need an answer by the 10th. I nodded. I'll think about it. I said, it wasn't a yes. It wasn't a no. It was enough to get them out of my house. My mother picked up her bag. My father slid the check back into his briefcase. At the door, she turned once more. This is a chance to move past old mistakes, she said. Don't let them cost you your future. I held the door open. My future isn't the problem. I said. They stepped outside. The same car. The same controlled movements. My father opening the passenger door for her like he always had. Like nothing had changed. As they drove away, I stood there for a second, letting the quiet settle back in. Then I closed the door. The house felt different. Not smaller, just clearer. They hadn't come back because they cared. They came back because they needed something. And for the first time since I was 16, I was the one deciding what happened next. I pulled the lockbox out from the back of my closet and set it on the bed. Knowing exactly what was inside before I even opened it, I hadn't touched it in years. Not because I forgot, because I didn't need to remember every day. The metal felt cold under my fingers as I flipped the latch. Inside, everything was exactly where I left it, neat, organized, untouched. Documents don't change over time. That's what makes them useful. I took out the letter first. 3 pages. Notarized. Clean margins. No emotion. Just language. Grace Elizabeth Myers forfeits all claims to the Myers family estate. No legal or moral obligation. Any dependents thereof. I read that last line again. Slower this time. Any dependents thereof. That was Lily. Reduced to a phrase before she even existed. I didn't feel angry reading it. I felt focused. I grabbed my phone and took photos of every page. Front. Back. Signatures. Stamps. I zoomed in on the notary seal. The date. The names. Then I uploaded everything to cloud storage and emailed copies to myself. No gaps. No missing pieces. If I was going to do this, it had to hold up. Mom? I looked up. Lily stood in the doorway. Hoodie on. Arms crossed. Watching me like she already knew what I was doing. Couldn't sleep? I asked. She shook her head and stepped into the room. That's the letter? She said. Yeah. She picked it up and read it. Slower than I had. Like she was seeing it for the first time in full. When she finished, she let out a quiet breath. They really did this. She said. They did. She looked at me. What are you going to do with it? I leaned back against the headboard. I'm not sure yet. I said. But whatever I do, they don't get to pretend anymore. She nodded once. I have an idea. She said. I didn't ask what it was right away. I let the silence sit for a second, letting her decide how much she wanted to say. They think they control the story. She continued. They've been telling it their way for 20 years. If you go to that party, it's their stage. I watched her. So don't play their version. She said. Change the script. That landed. Sampler. Clear. Exactly right. The next morning, I made a call I hadn't made in over a year. Mrs. Torres picked up on the 3rd ring. Grace? She said. Surprised. Is everything okay? I need your help. I said. That was enough. I told her about my parents showing up. About the anniversary party. About the grandson they had invented. I kept it direct. No drama. Just facts. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she was quiet for a second. Those people? she said finally. 20 years. And they haven't changed. I need to ask you something. I said. That night, when I left, I remember it, she said immediately. You were standing in the rain? That little suitcase. I watched from my window longer than I should have. Do you still have anything from back then? I asked. Photos? Footage? Another pause. You know I used to keep everything. She said. Old teacher habit. Let me check. I didn't breathe until she came back on the line. I found something, she said. It's grainy, but it's clear enough. Timestamps on it. My phone buzzed a minute later. I opened the email. There I was, 16 years old, standing on the porch in the rain. Suitcase at my feet. The timestamp in the corner. The address partially visible. Proof. Not a memory. Not a story. Evidence. Would you be willing to confirm this if I need you to? I asked. Grace, she said, her voice sharper now. I've been waiting 20 years for someone to ask me that. I smiled without meaning to. Thank you. Just tell me when, she said. I hung up and stared at the image for a long second. 2 pieces now. The letter, the footage, enough to show what happened. Not enough yet to control how it was seen. I needed more. That afternoon, I pulled up the article. Seattle Met, 2022. From teen mom to design CEO. I scrolled through it slowly. Not because I hadn't read it before, but because I needed to see what they had seen, where they got their version from. There it was. Child. Singular. No gender. That's all it took for them to build a story. I opened the comments. Thousands of them. Most supportive. Some curious. One stood out. Is she related to the Myers family in Portland? The law firm? I leaned back in my chair. That's how they found me. Not through concern. Through exposure. My phone rang. Eleanor, I hear your parents decided to reappear? She said. Word travels fast. This is Seattle, she replied. Nothing stays quiet. I filled her in. The visit, the offer, the check. She listened, then let out a slow breath. They want a performance, she said. They want you to show up and validate their version of reality. Yeah, so don't. I glanced at the documents on my desk. I'm not planning to. Good, she said. Then what are you planning? I thought about Lily's words. Change the script. They're hosting a live event. I said, 200 guests. Live stream through the church. There was a pause. Say that again? Eleanor said. Live stream. Her tone shifted. Then you don't just have an audience, she said. You have a record? Exactly. I hung up and sat there for a minute, letting the pieces come together. Documents, witness, public platform. No way to edit it after. No way to spin it before. That night, I laid everything out on the table. The letter, the photo, printed copies, backup files. Lily sat across from me, watching. So what's the plan? She asked. I looked at her. We go, I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Go? Not to do what they want. I added. To do what we need? She nodded slowly. Tell the truth? She said. On their stage? I replied. And in front of everyone that matters to them. I smiled. Exactly. She leaned back, arms crossed, thinking it through. I'm coming with you, she said. I shook my head instinctively. You don't have to. I know, she said. That's why I'm choosing to. I studied her for a second. 19 years old. Clear. Steady. Not afraid. They need to see me, she said. Not the version they made up? Me. I nodded. Okay. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in 20 years. Nathan. He answered on the second ring. Grace? Yeah. A pause. I need you to do something. I said, anything. Don't tell them I'm coming. Another pause. Okay, he said. I won't. Can you and Carolyn be there? I asked. We will. I ended the call and looked back at the table. Everything was in place. Not perfect, but solid. For the first time since they showed up at my door, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. They thought they were inviting me into their story. They weren't. They were giving me a stage. And this time, I was the one writing what happened next. I tightened my grip on Lily's hand as we stepped out of the car. The hotel lights hitting us before we even reached the entrance. The crystal ballroom looked exactly like something my parents would plan perfect. Polished. Expensive, in a way that made sure everyone noticed. Still time to walk away, Lily said quietly. I shook my head. Not tonight. We walked in. 200 people. Dressed like it mattered. Conversation stopped in small waves as we moved forward. Not dramatic. Just enough to feel it shift. Whispers started. Is that... I thought that's the daughter from the article. Good. They recognized me. That meant I didn't have to introduce myself from nothing. At the far end of the room, my parents stood on a raised platform. My father was already speaking. Microphone in hand. Voice steady. Confident. 50 years of marriage has taught me that family is everything. He said. I almost smiled. Of course, that's where he started. Lily glanced at me. Timing's great. She said. Yeah. I replied. Let's not waste it. We kept walking. The crowd parted just enough. Not out of respect, out of curiosity. My mother saw me first. Her expression didn't change right away. It froze. Like her brain needed a second to catch up to what her eyes were seeing. She reached for my father's arm. He followed her gaze. Stopped mid-sentence. For those of you who don't know me, I said, stepping onto the platform before anyone could stop me. My name is Grace Myers. I took the microphone from his hand. He didn't resist. Not yet. I'm their youngest daughter. I continued. The one they told you moved to Europe? The room went quiet. Not polite, quiet. Real quiet. I didn't move to Europe. I said, on November 14th, 2004. My parents found out I was pregnant at 16. I let that sit for half a second. That same night, they told me if I kept the baby, I was no longer part of the family. Someone in the crowd gasped. Good. They put me out in the rain with one suitcase. I continued. And 3 days later, my father mailed me this. I pulled the document from my bag and held it up. Signed. Notarized. It states that I forfeited all rights to the family, and that they had no legal or moral obligation to me. I paused, glancing down, then back up. Or any dependents thereof? I looked directly at them. That includes my child. My father stepped closer. Grace, he said under his breath. This isn't the place. I tilted the microphone slightly away from him. When is the place? I asked. Then brought it back up. Because last week, you came to my house, offering me $250,000 to pretend none of this happened. The room shifted. Phones came out. 250,000. I repeated. To bring a grandson to this party? I turned slightly, gesturing toward Lily. The problem is, there is no grandson. Lily stepped forward. I'm Lily, she said, taking the microphone when I handed it to her. I'm 19. I'm the child they decided didn't exist. You could feel it hit. Not loud, heavy. They've been telling people about a grandson for months, she continued. Someone successful. Someone they could be proud of. She looked at them. Steady. You didn't want me when I was real. She said, you don't get to invent someone better now. My mother's composure cracked. This is not how it happened, she said, her voice tight. Then explain it, I replied, taking the mic back. Explain why there's a legal document saying you cut me off completely. I held it up again, closer this time. The camera crew shifted. Zooming in. Live stream. No editing. No fixing this later. My father straightened. We made decisions during a difficult time, he said. We believed it was best for the family. You believed it was best for your reputation, I said. That landed harder. Nathan stepped forward from the side of the room. She's telling the truth, he said. Carolyn and I were there. We watched it happen. Carolyn joined him. We didn't stop it, she added. That's on us. The crowd wasn't quiet anymore. People were talking, reacting, some stepping back, like distance could separate them from what they were hearing. Mrs. Torres stood up from a table near the back. I saw her that night, she said, her voice clear. Standing in the rain. They drove away and didn't come back. Now there was no room left. No version of the story that held together. I looked back at the camera. I didn't come here for money. I said, I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I came here because I'm done being erased. I let that sit. 20 years ago, I had nothing. Today, I run a company with over 20 employees. My daughter is in college. We built our lives without them. I turned back to my parents. You don't get to rewrite that now. I handed the microphone back. Not to them, to the space. Let them deal with what was left. Lily took my hand again as we stepped off the platform. No one tried to stop us. They moved out of the way, this time for a different reason. Not curiosity, clarity. Outside, the air felt colder, cleaner. Lily exhaled. Okay, she said. That actually happened. I let out a breath. I didn't realize I was holding. Yeah, I said. It did. Did we go too far? I looked at her. No, I said. We told the truth. Behind us, the ballroom was still loud. Voices overlapping. The kind of noise that comes when something breaks all at once. By midnight, the clip was everywhere. By morning, people had picked sides. By the next week, my father had stepped down from 2 boards. Church leadership quietly shifted. Invitations stopped coming. Not because of what I did, because of what they had done. And now everyone knew. My phone didn't stop ringing. Clients, reporters, strangers. Most of them said the same thing. Thank you for saying it out loud. A few days later, my mother called. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. I don't think I deserve it. That was new. I just wanted to hear your voice, she added. I didn't hang up. That was as far as I was willing to go. For now, Thanksgiving that year looked different. Not perfect, but real. Lily at my right, Eleanor at my left, Nathan and Carolyn across the table. Trying, not pretending. Mrs. Torres teaching my niece how to fold napkins like it mattered. No one performing. No one managing anything. Just people who chose to be there. Lily raised her glass. To the family we build, she said. Not the one that decides if we're worth keeping. Everyone drank. I looked around the table and realized something simple. I didn't lose a family that night 20 years ago. I lost an image. What I built after that, that was real. And real doesn't need approval. It just needs truth.